Good evening, dear friends. This is Dr. Penny again. I hope you are well. I hope your weekend has started well. This is Dr. Penny, a counseling psychologist, marriage and family life the therapist, a mental health professional, but most of all, a believer and a born again Christian. And I wanted us to talk about a subject that is dear to my heart as a domestic violence survivor, but also a topic that has raised its ugly head in so many places, and it is impacting the lives of so many people. A topic that in our culture we don't want to talk about, because I come from a culture where we are told that women, mutumia nigukirakiraga, nigutumiria atumiragia. In other words, women are expected to swallow and hide whatever they are going through. But today I want to take it an extra direction, where in the sense that I want us to talk about domestic violence among believers, among ministers, men and women of God. And we don't talk about this, and as a minister myself and many others who are listening to me tonight, and please tag your friends, invite people, because we go to our ministers and to our leaders for guidance, for counseling, for therapy. I'm a therapist also, and I want to admit that right from the very beginning, that as a minister, as a therapist, it's very hard for me to open up and say this every time I say it. But I survived 30 years domestic violence, and the only way I can gain something out of it, I pray to God that since he refused me to die when I attempted suicide, I pray to God that if you have a reason for me to live, then let me make something beautiful out of this. Give me a chance to live my life in a way that I can be a blessing to somebody else, because from many cultures, and especially from our own African culture, we know that domestic violence was almost acceptable. It was condoned in places. But now, as we look back, we realize that it has taken far too many lives, and too many people are suffering and suffering in silence. It is not a topic we address because I'm proud of it. I wish I didn't have to talk about it, but as I look back and see myself as a young wife, as a young mother, as a young professional going through domestic violence, and looking back and wishing I had people to talk to, that I had people like we have therapists today, and I see a lot of our therapists online, and many are there for you. Many are there, sharing their own pain, and we are telling each other that we are all in this together, that you do not have to go through domestic violence in hiding. I said I'm a full-time mental health professional, and many of you have heard me say that we need to come out and talk about mental health, talk about depression, talk about now we need to talk about domestic violence, even among our preachers, among preachers' wives, preachers who are being abused by their wives as well, because let's be honest enough and say that domestic violence can be perpetrated by women and men as well. But the reality is that 80% of the domestic violence victims are usually women. And where that goes, it also involves our children. And the reason I'm talking about this is because you and I realize that we have a lot of pastors' wives, especially wives, who will sit in the front of in the front row of the church. They have a designated place, a seat of honor. They will come there. I decided to wear a headscarf today because I have a statement with that. I forgot to wear a mask, and I will get it before I finish this program. We are used to wearing headscarves, those of us who grew up with headscarves, because it helps me cover my wounds. It helps me cover big, swollen eyes. It used to help me cover my red eyes, where you've been beaten to, into pulp, and you don't want to tell anybody. So I would go to the office with my headscarf. Why are you wearing a headscarf? It's a style. I don't know about you. How many things have you covered? How many times have we been asked by people, how are you doing? Oh, I am good. I am beautifully blessed. I am blessed and highly favored. And I've said this and asked myself, How many times have you said that to somebody, knowing that deep inside yourself you are bleeding, knowing that you are there, you are encouraging other people like I did for years. You are a pastor's wife who people come and see when they have marital issues. Or you are a minister yourself. You are going through stuff, but you're not telling anybody because just like a therapist, it is very hard for us to come out and go for therapy. Nowadays, I tell my fellow therapists that have a counselor for yourself, have a therapist for yourself, because every one of us needs a shoulder to lean on. There will be times whether you are grieving one thing or another, the grieving of losing your marriage to domestic violence, to divorce and everything. And now the reason I'm bringing this up is because most of our ministers, and even for us as Christians, even though we are not ministers, we have this saying that God hates divorce. And I want to clarify that before I go far, because I think that statement has been used erroneously. We read that statement, God hates divorce, but there's something behind that that we don't read. Refer to the New Living Translation, Malachi chapter 2, verse 16. It says, "For I hate divorce." Almost all the time when we read that, that is what we are reading. God hates divorce. But have you read the latter part of that statement? Yes, he says, "For I hate divorce." That is God speaking. Says the Lord, the God of Israel. And then he says, "To divorce your wife is to overwhelm her with cruelty, says the Lord of heaven's armies." So guard your heart. Don't be unfaithful to your wife. How many of you have heard that last part of that statement? We hear, I was reading Malachi 2:16. We hear God hates divorce, and so we go preaching it. I have also said those words, especially in my early years, in my 30 years of domestic violence and everything. Before I went through my own divorce, before I came out and said I was being abused, because one, I was already in ministry. I was of all things, I was in the women ministry. I was praying for couples. I was praying for women especially, who looked at me and thought that this is a well-made woman. I dressed well. I was a professional. I was active at All Saints Cathedral. Those of you who know the big All Saints Cathedral Church in Nairobi, of all the places, yes. So who would want to go out there and say, here I am in the youth and women ministry, but I am being battered, I am being abused. And domestic violence is not just physical, it is physical, it is economical, where he controls you in such a way that to the extent that he knows he is controlling every dime, every penny, every dollar, for those of you who are out here, so that when things go completely out of control, you cannot run away. And this is why you hear people asking others, what were you waiting for all those 30 years? Yes, I lasted there. Did I want to? I didn't want to. And I'm saying this because there are many others today who are living in violent situations. They go to the ministers, and I'm one of them. I'm guilty, but I'm not guilty because after going through what I did, I will not tell anybody, go back and obey your husband when he's beating up on you, when he's diminishing your value, when he's calling you names in front of your children, when he's controlling your money to the extent that you cannot even buy a panty for yourself. You earn like I did, and then you have to go beg for the same money that you have worked for. I want to start by saying, yes, I said God hates divorce, but the final thing is, because he hates divorce because to divorce your wife is to overwhelm her with your cruelty. So guard your heart and don't be unfaithful to your wife. God did not leave it there. He went ahead and said why he hated it. But most of us, including us as as preachers, and even as fellow Christians, when we are in a group of fellowship, we are telling each other, oh, you cannot go through divorce. You have to continue obeying. Submit yourself. And we submit because, to start with, there is not a girl or a man who went down the aisle on the wedding day. in your white dress, with all your guests, with a plan at the back of your mind that in 10 years or 5 years or 30 years, like I did, you are going to leave your marriage. Hear me out. Nobody planned for that, but it happens to the best and the worst. I am bringing in the fact that we have our preachers, our minister wives who are going through this, but they cannot come out and say it because just like therapists, you are supposed to take care of yourself and not crack, not get depressed. And you will, we will get depressed. I can see my sister Maria. I can see Dr. Jane. We do get depressed because you are dealing with issues just like anybody else. You have a family to raise. You have work to do. This coronavirus is not exempting any of us. Everybody is going through stress. When people are going through why do people hide from saying they are being abused? We laugh at each other. We backbite each other. And then we have a group of us, and I was one of that. Let me start by saying that. You are going through stuff, but like since I'm a counselor, I wouldn't go telling my clients that I was also being battered. I was helping them and guiding them and coaching them on how to survive it. And maybe many were able to save their marriages, but mine ended up on the rocks. We know how to do what the society is telling us to do because we know society is saying divorce is unacceptable. It is now that we are beginning to say, yes, it is not good. I'm a mother of 6, 1 daughter and 3 sons. But now I have 3 daughters and 3 sons because 2 of my sons are married. What am I saying? I am not in any way saying that divorce is the right place. I will never tell you that grass is greener where I am. It is not. It is a tough road, but God. I will say this, but I'll also say that if you are living in a life where your life is threatened, like mine ended up threatened, you need to rethink it. I also want to say that we hide it because society is telling us, you go to your pastor and he tells you, oh, you have to go back and obey your husband. Or if it is the husbands, don't even talk about it. Women are better because we'll go and say we are being battered. But our sons and our brothers don't talk about it because of the shame we have put. When he goes to the police to say that my wife has slapped me, they laugh at him. And many of us are just as guilty when your brother tells you that he's being beaten. What do we say? Are you a woman? Your son comes and says the same thing. We are asking them, are they women? Are they women? We need to change our thoughts. We need to change the way we react when these things are happening, because when it happens, it does not matter whether it is a man or a woman. Domestic violence is totally unacceptable, whether it is on men or women. Men are very rarely coming out and saying that they are going through it, but we are now encouraging them. It all starts because we raised our sons telling them that, oh, boys don't cry, or boys are rulers. And you are forgetting that when here we are empowering our daughters never to say yes to abuse. We are not equipping our sons. Sometimes we even fail to tell our sons, wait, the girl you are likely going to marry has been told that they should never condone any beating. We don't tell our sons that. And so he goes out looking at his father and pretending to be like his father, who has beaten you in front of them. And so they are confused. We need to work on this. One, it will happen even in preachers' homes. It is happening to preachers' wives. And even when we suspect they are going through it, we don't reach out to them because we don't know how they are going to react, and they are very good at covering. I am a minister myself. I covered it because I was in ministry even as a young wife. But I never wanted anybody to know because of the shame and the stigma that we have put on it. Just like when I talk about mental illness, when I talked about HIV and AIDS, I've been in all those trenches. We hide. But now we are telling people it is not a death sentence. And even when you have a husband or a spouse, or whether it is a husband or a wife who is threatening your wife, it should not be a death sentence. And I like what Dr. Bernadette said here the other day, that we end up feeling very, very helpless, very inadequate, like we can't do anything about it. And that is what I went through. I felt, one, I didn't have the money. And I want to say this again. I don't say these things to wash my dirty linens. I have forgiven my husband. We talk about our children, but between us there is nothing. But I want to say that, and I can see our sons and our brothers are here. I'm not ashamed to talk about it, because maybe there's a young man, a husband here who is listening, and you are battling between the two. You are raised by a father or an uncle or a grandfather who was beating their wives. Maybe you need to hear this. The daughters we are raising, just as much as we are raising responsible sons, we are telling our sons, and you should be telling your daughter also, they don't deserve any domestic violence. They do not deserve, no adult deserves to be beaten by anybody, no matter what. You can talk to them. And so we need to educate our children. We need to educate our brothers and our sisters. We need to educate both the girl child and the boy child, because unless we balance, we will end up with girls who are totally equipped and very empowered, but sons who are getting married with the notion that what daddy did is what I need to do to prove I am a man. Those are things we need to go to, changes in our culture that we need to improve, so that as a mother of boys, I have been praying every day, and I continue praying that my sons' wives will be happy. My sons' wives will be valued. I have told them over and over, whatever you hated when you looked at me being battered, you will never do it to another person's daughter. Whatever you don't want anybody to do to your sister, do not go out there and do it to anybody's daughter. And so it has to start with us. These teachings and these habits need to be planted in our children growing up. When you are going through your own stuff, I wish I knew this. Well, you don't have to tell them everything that is happening that is causing, friction between you and your husband. Tell them with appropriate languages. Remember that children know what is going on. You are beaten, you hide it. They know what is going on. You are being quarreled in front of them, or you are quarreling your husband in front of your children. Children are observing. And I keep on saying that the thing that I regret most is not what the battering and abuse did to my life. It did a lot. You can bet it did. It hurt me. It changed my life. It has taken God to heal me and regroup me and get me going again. But what I regret most is the impact of domestic violence over my children. I will repeat that, and I want you to hear me loud and clear. If you are here and you have children, and I'm saying this because we are compelled by society, we are compelled by our faith, we are compelled by our ministers oftentimes. You have to make it out. You cannot leave that man, you cannot leave this woman, because of the shame it brings to your family, because of the stigma that you're going to get. Nobody reminds you that, yes, you can stay here, but you also need to consider what it is doing to your children, because they will be left dealing with it years to come. They'll be left dealing with it in their own marriages. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? For you to protect a name because you are wondering, as a Christian, as a woman in ministry, I always worried, what are people going to say? What impression and you know what? I had a husband who knew that I was in ministry. I had a husband who knew what people knew about me. And he reminded me, if you leave today, what are people going to say? Are you there and somebody's telling you that? I had written a book on families. The desire of every heart are happy families. That was my first book in 1993. And he used that against me. He reminded me over and over. People already know you're in ministry. People already know you are an author talking about good families. What are they going to say? And that is the perpetrator's way of holding you down. The perpetrator's way of disarming you, making sure that you are helpless, you are hopeless. You cannot even think beyond that, the beating. And I'm encouraging us. I'm encouraging us to, I hope you can hear me. I see my cousin asking me to speak louder. Can you hear me? Yeah, we need to realize that what the world will say is completely irrelevant if you waited and lived in it like I did. And I almost took my life. I'm not proud of saying that I tried suicide twice. I am alive by nothing but God's grace. And this is why I will dare talk about this topic and say that, yes, even those of us who are in ministry, we go through stuff, we hide it because of, I don't want to people who are ministering to know that I'm also counseling them and encouraging them, but I'm also going through it. It is the high time we realize that you need to stop worrying what people are going to say about you. You need to start worrying about yourself and your children. You are a minister. God is not judging you just because of that. He knows you. He's interested in you. And let me read Isaiah 43:18 and 19. Forget all that is past. Stop comparing it with, forget all that is in the past. I am going to do something new, for I am about to do something new. See, I have already begun. Do you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness of your life. I will create rivers in the dry wasteland. Perhaps today you are feeling like you're in the dry wasteland. Perhaps like me, you feel that, one, I am unacceptable. It will bring shame to me. Where do I start? For me, I kept on saying, oh, I don't have money. My money is all under his control. I started knitting, but I thought it wasn't enough. I wasn't bold enough. And one of the things I want us to realize is that the perpetrators, the abusers, start by belittling you, making you feel as useless as you can be, reminding you that you cannot be anything away from them. One, I married my high school sweetheart. We met when I was at Alliance Girls High School, and I thought I had made a kill. I had grown up with a father who was abusive, and so here they know you're telling them you will never lay your hands on me, and they will do that at the first couple of months when you get married. They will tell you what you need to hear. One of the things I want to remind us before I say, set up your boundaries right from the very beginning. Set up your boundaries right from the very beginning. If you will never accept some things, do not give in just to please somebody, to play it cool, to keep peace, knowing that 5 years down the line, I will not accept that. Dr. Ali said, Diana, the other Dr. Ali is in Qatar, that you need to know what you want and stand with it. Will it cost you something? It will cost you something. You have your morals. You have your dreams. Many of us have shelved our dreams. I did. For 40 years, I wanted to go back to college. I waited and waited. He had nothing to do with it. We had money. We could have afforded it. But he knew that that was his way of controlling and making sure that truly I become nothing. Are you there? You have given in. There was no online studies. Now there is. I'm challenging you. What can you do to equip yourself against their wishes? What can you do to train yourself to do something that can give you some, some empowerment? And I'm not just saying this because you're leaving. I'm not talking about divorce, but I'm talking about how can you equip yourself to the extent that even if you're going to live with this person, you can also make them realize whether you are the wife who is being abused or the husband who is being abused. You can be able to stand your ground and say, I am worth something. And every person listening to me tonight, you are worth a million. You are invaluable. There is no quantity for your value. But many of us who have gone through that, you can remember that. You've been told stuff, you've been called stupid, you have been beaten down, you have been called all kinds of names that made you feel like you're worth nothing. Because that is a way of controlling you and making you feel that you can never amount to anything. Because that is a way of controlling you. The ministers among us. We are ashamed to admit because We have given a certain image to our congregation, which is very good. That is what we need to maintain. But guess what? We are human. We have feelings. We have emotions. We have heartaches. We need to admit that we are hurting. I'm not saying we wash our dirty linen in public, but I'm also encouraging society. Please stop setting boundaries for us just because we are in ministry. That I cannot admit I'm suffering. Give me permission to say I am hurting. Give me permission to say that I am being beaten down. Give me permission to stop covering myself with a headache. I say that's why I'm using a scarf today, because that is what I did for many years. Who is listening to me? And you're covering it up. Guess what? You become an enabler. And I'm saying this with a lot of respect, with all due respect, because I'm saying the things I did. I am using myself to say that there are many times we cover them up. There are many times we hide. And mine used to brag. You know what? My wife is that kind of an African queen, the Gadha. She will never talk about her family affairs in public. You know what he meant? She will never tell anybody that I'm beating on her. So whose benefit was that? To his benefit. My mother had gone through it and she picked it up in places. I denied it vehemently because I thought I was going to be a problem to my mother. I thought I was going to bring shame, because that is what society has taught us. The most important thing is not you and me. The most important thing is the public image. And that is what, even for us as ministers, when people come to us saying that I am being abused, I'm going through this, stop helping them to cover up. Because what is happening now in the age of empowerment, in the age of openness, when we go covering them up, they can only bury it down for a while. We subdue it, we suppress it, but then what is happening? How many of us can admit with me that we have a lot more spousal killings, deaths that could have been prevented? Had we stuck with them and said, I hear you, I don't have a solution, but I want to be with you. I want to help you. I will pray with you. Don't judge them. Don't condemn them. Don't go telling other people about what you're going through. I like what Nyambura is saying. We tell them, go back home and pray. By the time I come out and tell you, pray for me, I have prayed ceaselessly. I waited and prayed. Let me admit here, my cousin is in this group. She's listening. I enlisted my mother to pray with me and fast for the first 15 years of my marriage, praying that I would be a good wife, a good mother, a good role model that would entice him to get saved. And one of the things I want to admit and remember as one of the things, the red signs that we ignore. At the very beginning, we are told, do not yoke yourself with non-believers. I did, and I paid for it. Maybe like me, out of your ignorance and that blind love. And I pray that nobody is dealing with blind love nowadays, because we know better than we did. You can see, you are seeing red flags, but you are so eager to get married. You are so eager, and you're promising yourself, like I did, I am going to influence him to come on my side of salvation. Little did I know, like my mother ended up telling me, that it will take him choosing God, not you forcing him. Nyambura was 18, I was 21, but I was still naive. I was still naive, and many of you can admit that. But when you wake up now, if you have woken up earlier than I did, set your boundaries, healthy boundaries. Reveal to the person that is abusing you that I am a person of value. Remember, the Bible says, and I'm not preaching, but you know what has brought me this far? One, I'm a minister. But what has also brought me this far is my relationship with God. It is knowing that God was there for me, but I still got desperate. I still got suicidal, and I attempted it. But I thank God because He gave me a chance. I am humbled, I am alive, knowing that many have lost their lives this way. But I want to encourage you that don't do it the way I did, hiding it, uncovering them, enabling them. Yes, They will make sure that they disarm you. They incapacitate you emotionally, psychologically, in every way, to make sure that even if you thought you want to move, where do you go? The sad thing is, we have sisters who can bear, but the moment you tell somebody, and somebody, I listened to somebody today saying that make a choice, pray to God, ask God to give you one good person, one good friend, a trusted friend, who you can pour out your pain, who you can be honest with and tell them, I am broken, I'm going through hell. But somebody who is not going to leave you and go tell your husband that she's planning to leave or she's talking about you. Because that is what women do best. You confide with your friend. And that is why so many of us were afraid of even sharing. Because how do I know who is going to talk about me? You tell somebody in good faith, please pray for me. What do? They come on a forum like this and say, oh, well, let's pray for Dr. Penny. She's going through a BCD. If I wanted everybody to be praying for me, knowing exactly what I am going through, I would come and put it here. I'm so glad we have so many HMIs that we have shown confidence to our people, where we are saying in cars, we are saying, I can. And when you see that, you don't need to know that person's name. Go out there and help them. We have Eunice calling us to changia somebody, to give $1 or $2. And together we've been able to bail people out of very, very sticky moments. People are living in these places because I don't know who I can call. I don't know who I can confide in. You tell somebody that this is what I'm thinking. Can you hide my documents when I'm planning my way out? The same person you are giving your documents, the same person you are seeking guidance from, is the one who goes round you, tells this person, and this person tells another person. Before you know it, you are being killed before you escape. You tell somebody, please speak to my children because they are suffering as I'm going through this. And a lot of times your children will not even tell you the emotional suffering they are going through because they care about you. They want to protect you. They are hurting for you. And like me, perhaps you are so busy. I was worried, what do I do? My children are in good schools. I cannot afford it on my own. So I'm hanging in there and pleading with God, God, I cannot even die until my son is 18 years to get an ID and to be able to speak for themselves legally. You are here, you are listening to me. The time you are waiting for them to get big enough or for them to finish school, they are dying on the inside. Please hear me. They are dying on their inside. They are bleeding for you. And most of them are asking, why can't we live, and even if we are going to live in the car? Even if you're going to live in the car, new sisters who are here, you know somebody going through that. Do they go and do they have to go and live in a car with their children? If they can go to a shelter, lead them to a shelter. Is there something we can do to help them? Is there something we can do to help them? Can we give them $1 here and there? How many times do we go out and buy food in a McDonald's that we can wait for tomorrow? Whose life are you touching by telling them, I know you are going through pain, but I'm standing with you. I'm not judging you. I'm not condemning you. That's what people need to hear. The pastor's wife who is your therapist, who loves you, who prays for you. But when you discover that they are being beaten, what do? We shame them. We stigmatize them, because how can a pastor's wife go through this? How can a whole minister like Dr. Penny go through this? Because I'm human. Because it takes two people to make a marriage. I cannot make it alone. I needed somebody to help me, but I might have fallen onto the wrong, with the wrong person. Nobody chooses somebody to abuse them tomorrow. It happens to anybody. It can happen to you. The other thing is we pretend to each other. You know you're also going through stuff. You are a minister like me. You are a therapist like me. You are going through stuff. You are hurting. You are being abused. But you know how to fake. I did. But I'm asking, as even if you are not going to tell anybody, but please learn to identify with people. If you don't give them anything, those of you who are therapists here know what it means when you tell somebody that I can identify with you. Just hearing those words that somebody can identify with me, somebody hears me and they're not judging me, somebody believes in me when I say that I'm being battered, maybe that is all they need. Some of the people who are being battered, they even have money. They don't need your money, but they need you to help them to make up the right choices, to make up the right decisions, be their thinking partners. Help them to make the right choices, help them to guide them to resources, guide them to shelters. Leaving your home or helping this person to leave the abuser for a while does not mean that we are saying break up your home. I said I do not advocate divorces if you can help it, and I would say do everything possible to make sure that if you have to live like I did, you will not look back and say, I wish, and I wish I did this, I wish I did that, I wish I didn't harass him. Make sure that you are clean, because God is also looking. And I also say that if you and I are praying, God, hear me when I'm crying because I'm being harassed, I expect God to hear me. I expect God to protect me. Remember that do not be guilty of the same things. Don't let somebody cry calling your name to God because you're also harassing them. It takes two people. And we are now admitting that unless God intervenes, we have a rising number of women abusing their spouses. And guess what? Just like we say, when a husband abuses a wife, they are being very cruel to the children. If you are here and you're abusing your spouse for any reason, remember that you are hurting your children too. Guess what? They'll grow up and bring it back on you. Bring it back on you. Reveal to you what they saw. So make sure that you're not guilty of what you're accusing other people. I have said in places, and I'll say it again here. Be the friend you're looking for in other people. Do unto others. The Bible says, do unto others what you want them to do for you. Make sure that you are not guilty of things you are accusing them. By the way, we say that, oh, men are promiscuous. Let's not generalize that. Do you have sons? Do you have brothers? Do you want them condemned for things they have not done? Just because one rotten potato is in a bag does not mean that all the potatoes are rotten. Just the same way that we are told that divorced women often become prostitutes. Don't you ever say that in front of me, because I will not accept it. I am not a prostitute. I chose chastity for me. I pray to God, don't you ever let me be accused of prostitution for somebody to say in the end that I knew she was going to become a prostitute. In the same token, I'm asking us, let's not accuse them. If you know they are not doing it, don't accuse them, because between you, me, and them and God, He knows the truth. Make sure that God knows the truth you're telling us. Make sure that I am also not breaking him into pieces, because remember, and it took me 6.5 years to tell myself I needed to forgive him after all the battering. I left home empty-handed with nothing but my children, my certificates, my passport. No money, no nothing. And as I was pleading with God years after, why did I have to leave everything we had and walk out empty-handed to suffer with my children? Guess what God reminded me? I gave you the best. And I will say it again. Take care of your children. You can go out and earn money. You can go out and buy a home. You can go out and start again. Many of you know that when I came into this country 20 years ago in 2000, all I brought was my high school diploma from Alliance Girls. No college education. I was a college material. I was a gifted student, but I was the first of 10. So I had stopped at high school to educate my siblings. But guess what? Don't give up on your dream. It took me 41 years from the day I left Alliance Girls to start college at 56. You are there, you are being abused, you are being told you will never become anything, you will never amount to anything. I believed it for a while, but there was something inside of me that refused that lie. And I am saying this because you are there. You are being called those names. You are told you never amount to anything. You are a minister's wife. He's saying, if you dare leave this home, if you dare expose me, I'll go excuse you. They will threaten you of tarnishing your name. They will threaten you of messing you up in a way that you cannot recover again. But there is a God. And that is why I'm saying that in everything you do, be sure that you can stand in front of God and say, God, this is who I am. This is what I bring. I can be accused of anything, but if I am clean between me and God, I'm okay. You need to be okay between you and God. And back to where I said, do not worry. Don't worry what people are going to say because they will speak. You stay in that home and die in it like I almost did. We'll bury you and move on and talk about you and say how stupid you had been. Why didn't Sheila run? We have a situation where we are now saying the same thing. Why didn't she leave? And please, ladies, before you ask anybody, what were you waiting for? Why did you not go? Sorry about that. I don't know what caused the break. Before you blame somebody that they have overstayed, what are they doing? Why are you so stupid you are staying in there? Ask yourself, do I look like a fool that I couldn't have thought of the need to move? I knew I needed to move, but what were my choices? Now I know better. I could have done better if it was today. But at the time, that is all I knew, that I was helpless. And I like what Dr. Bernadette reminded yesterday. Even if it means going out with one dress, you will go and start again. If it means going and start, run with your life. Run for your life, because I was sought, I was hunted for years. They will mess you up as much as they can. A minister as I was, a time came for me to be ordained, he stopped it. He knew that was the hardest blow. He did it. He inflicted it, but God is a God of new opportunities. I will read something else. Isaiah 54, verse 17. No weapon forged against you will prevail. No weapon set against you will prosper. In Jesus' name. You are there and you are feeling like I did. You are feeling helpless. You are feeling finished. Our God is a God of a second chance. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, to prosper you and never to harm you, to give you a future with a hope. Listen to what I'm not saying it. I'm saying what I'm sharing. The words that have lifted me out of the trenches to start again, to swallow my pride and speak it out so that somebody somewhere, a younger lady, a younger person, even a person of my age who is still hanging in there, because they feel as that their hands are tied up as I felt. I know what it is to be stuck. If you find somebody stuck, please don't laugh at them. Don't think don't tell them they are not using their common sense. They know exactly what they need to do, but how are they going to do it? Do they have any resources? Where are they taking their children? Here we can lead them to shelters. But a lot of us, instead of guiding them and giving them alternatives, we get busy gossiping. We get talking. Have you heard? Dr. Penny is going through this. Hata ukimwona, she is dressed and she is everything. But this is who she is. Amen. Don't shame me. Depression. I went through it for 25 years. But God, somebody says there is hope. Thank you, Jesus, there is hope. In Jesus' name, there is hope. If you're there and you're feeling like I did, there is hope. It is not over until God says it is over. And the other thing before we forget is that we say that abused children become abusers. There is a certain amount of truth in that. So what are you doing with your children as you are going through this? Be sensitive to the fact that how are you protecting them from taking on that? They can see you being beaten. They can see you giving in. I watched my mother going through it until one day my father beat her up and broke her leg. Took off and went wherever he went to his women. I was in class 8. But I was the one who had to, I'm a slum child, I've said that in the past. From Makadara, I would take my mother to Kenyatta on Miss School, a class 8. take her to the doctor at Kenyatta, then go back, cook for the children, and do whatever needed to be done. You are there, you're going through the same thing. It is not over until God says it is over. I am a broken, yes, I'm a wounded healer. That's what I call myself. But I thank God. He uses broken vessels. He uses broken vessels. He can use you. I have said here in the past during some groups that we need to just do that. Shake off whatever is going on and remember that. Ask God to give you that stamina. And I have said that oftentimes dealing with chronic pain, I have learned to say that I'm working from my head, not from my body, because I sit here and sometimes rising from this chair, sometimes it is hard. But I have to tell myself, aching body or no aching body, but I have something. I have a voice. And I'm encouraging all of us, please don't take your wisdom, don't take your tenacity, don't take your encouragement to the grave with you. We have so many sisters who are hurting. They need people who can love on them, people who can mentor them, people who can encourage them, not judges, not condemnation. If you don't want to spend a dime on them, leave them alone. Don't give them something if you don't want to give them. Don't give them your words. If you don't want to give them kind words, don't do it. Because God is going to raise somebody else to do it. Yes, God has the remnants. God has people He's using, and He can use you. Be available, because guess what? Today it is our generation that is going through this. We have daughters we are raising who apparently are going through the same thing. We have granddaughters who are growing up and watching us. What are we teaching them? Just to sit there and die in it because people are going to talk? I'll say something I said a few days ago. Tell your daughters, your sisters, and your brothers, whoever it is, you would rather have them come back divorced than come back in a coffin. I'd rather have my sister, I'd rather have my daughter come back to me alive, divorced, instead of forcing them to stay there where they were. Like we were told, oh, you cannot come back home. You got married, we broke your bed and everything. I said those words in one wedding, and I went home convicted. When I told my niece, Penina, you are married, we have broken your bed, don't ever come back home. I have regretted those words all my life. And I have made sure that if I speak to anybody's wedding, I always say, we did not break your bed, we bought a double bed. It is us women who are going to say that. We need to tell our daughters that they are not cast out of our homes just because they got married. And in the same token, we need to tell our sons the same thing, because they are also getting married and being cast wherever they go. Let us learn to change the paradigm. Let us change the way of the things we say. Let us tell our children, if you get married, I did not break your bed. I extended your bed. It is now a double bed. Love on both of them, because what are we saying? What are we saying? They become one. So why are you breaking that bed to the extent that your daughter knows without any doubt, if I am being beaten, if I'm being abused, I can never go back home. That's what I did. But that was my own mistake, because my father had told me, I'm not comfortable you marrying who you're marrying. And I lived with that guilt. So when things were happening, I wouldn't tell anybody, and I knew he was an abuser himself, but I would not tell anybody. I would not tell my mother, because my mother had also cautioned me, Penny, you are born again, you're marrying an unbeliever, that is a no-no. But the naive me, the mjuaji in us when we are young, I thought I knew it. Let me marry him, I will change him. But thank God, my mother did not give up on me. She stuck with me to her dying day. When I went through my divorce, I became an outcast. You all know that. And when you're making divorced women outcasts, you're forgetting that it can happen to you. You're forgetting it can happen to your daughter. That daughter you are grooming and really loving, like I do with mine. It can happen to anybody. So be careful what you are doing with those who have gone through divorce. Nobody married to with a divorce plan in their heads. Not even pastors. And women in ministry are hardest hit. We are now beginning to come out that it is happening to us. But for years, you will never hear of a divorced woman, a minister, coming out and say, I went through the same thing. But now we are saying it happens. None of us is exempted. I like what Dr. Monica is saying. Let us break the culture and free our women. And I want to say again and again, I'm not advocating for divorce. My sons are married. I love my daughters. You know, those of you who know me, you know I love my daughters. I don't even call them my daughters-in-law. They became the children of my womb. But at the same time, I have to caution my sons. You don't want anybody touching your sister, don't go touching them. But how many of us mothers-in-law, let me step on some people's shoes also. I went through this mothers-in-law syndrome. My mother-in-law was a part of my undoing. Are you one of those women who are advocating that because your son is a son, he can do all he wants with your daughters? What would it feel like if somebody did the same thing with your daughter? That which you are not going to allow to be done with your daughter, you are not going to allow your son to do it to somebody's daughter. Because this girl who was married into your family is a gift to you. Work with them. I know we have some of them who are hard to work with, but don't you be the guilty one. Love on them and do what you need to do. Be the example. Be the one who sets the standard of loving. But don't be the one who is condemning them. I see my daughter there, and I will not be ashamed to say that my daughter is watching with us. And she knows I have said it, that she's one of me. She's my child just like the one I bore. I have two of them, and I'm never ashamed to say that I love them. Carrie and Stella are part of my womb. And that is why I dare to say how many of us are playing the part of the mother-in-law syndrome. I suffered it. Why would I go ahead and do it to my son's wife? We are talking about divorce. We are talking domestic violence. We are advocating it just because you raised a son. You raised a son. Somebody raised a daughter. What do you want? Yeah, we are talking about the bitter truth. We are being real. We need to stop being wishy-washy because we are talking about divorce on the rise. What part is our generation playing? What have you played? What have you done to bring it on? And when you had your daughter-in-law, you are hurting your son. How can you love your son and not love the other half? How can you tell those lies? How can you live with it? Am I perfect? I'm not perfect. I need to be loved. I need to be appreciated. I need to be accepted. But what am I doing for other people? Domestic violence starts with you. It starts with you and me. I condoned it. My greatest guilt, I keep on saying my greatest guilt was compromising. I'll say it very loudly. I said no. I said yes 1,000 times when I should have said no. Are you there? Just to keep peace, to be non-confrontational. You are saying yes. A yes that also hurts your child. A yes that is hurting your children. A yes that is hurting you eternally. A yes that is driving you crazy and giving you depression just to take care of the other person. You are your own Jerusalem. Take care of yourself. Put on your mask first. Put on your mask first before you go putting other people's mask. I wish I knew that before. I have swallowed too much trash. I have swallowed too much pain. But the worst of it is when I look back and realize that had God not been on my side, my children would have perished. I see nothing but God's grace that my children are standing. That they have learned to appreciate God and invite God into their lives. I wasn't that example for them. But I thank God for mercy. And why am I saying that? You are there, you are being abused, you have children. They can see you, they are watching you. And then it comes a time when, you are divorced and you have moved on with your life. But the perpetrator has not had enough of you. The divorce went through and everything. But they still push on you. There had to come a time. You said yes. I said here that I said a million yeses when I should have said a million no's. And they still don't believe that now I can say a no. I went back to school old. And I stopped being old schooled. I became a new school. I know that I'm a woman of value. With all due respect, I'm not prideful, but I'm saying, God says it, I'm not saying it. You are unique. You are invaluable. You make a difference that nobody else can make. Yes, God's grace is sufficient for you. You are there, you are hurting, you're going through stuff, and you're wondering, why me? Unfortunately, none of us is exempted. None of us is given a forewarning when we are getting married, when we are being given false promises, to realize that this is a wolf in sheepskin. And even when you come to realizing, we live with hopes and wishes. Domestic violence for some of us started even before you had your first baby. And you kept on hoping and saying, God, I'm praying and really hoping it will go. There has to come a time where you have to wake up before it is too late, because the longer you live without fighting, the longer you live in it without saying anything, because I don't want to be confrontational, because I want to be the ideal woman. And somebody challenged me after I left home that she told me in words I'll never forget, I am so disappointed in you, because to me, you are the ideal woman. You're always the ideal wife. You're always the ideal mother. I lived for that. You want to be loved and appreciated. You want to be accepted. I want to challenge you at what cost? Because I paid heavily for that. I wanted that, and I gave people what they wanted. I wanted to be that public image for people, that public image of a Christian woman. But at what cost? Today I look back and I say, the people I apologize to are my children. But now I'm also learning to say I have forgiven myself and my folly. I have forgiven myself for compromising. I'm forgiving myself for having been an enabler. Because, I read Isaiah 43:18, where God is saying, forget your past. Forgive yourself. It happened. I can't change it, but I can do something about my future. What are you doing to equip yourself for that day when you say, I am jumping off this cliff? And I'll promise you it is scary, because the day I made up my mind, I am jumping off the cliff, I literally felt like I was standing on a cliff with my two children on each shoulder, because then they were young and not married. And I was pleading with God, God, I know I wanted to commit suicide, and you refused, because he did. He refused for me to go for a reason. Now I look back and I thank God. God, forgive me, I tried suicide. Because he had a plan. That time I couldn't see any meaning of my life. Because that is what had been planted in my mind. You are there, you've been told the same thing. You're good for nothing. You are even the worst of mothers, because when you go through this, your children absorb it. Mine absorbed it and started doing stuff like any other teenager. I was blamed for failure as a mother. Nobody cared what had happened. Nobody cared how I had gotten there. But God is a God of a second chance. You are there, you are trying. You are feeling hopeless. You are feeling like you'll never make it. You will make it, because God gave me a chance. He will cause you to walk away. Be ready to walk away empty-handed, like he caused me to do it. Because he knew I had gotten to a point where I was in ministry, but I was told you cannot even do any ministry anymore. Again, I was guilty of idolatry, not adultery, but idolatry, where I gave in to please him, You are there as a minister. You are not doing what you're supposed to be doing because you're afraid of him. I was afraid of him. I wanted to keep peace. And so I idolatred. What do you say? It's like he became my idol. I'm guilty of that. But thank God, because he's a God of mercy. He's a God of a second chance. He says, if God can forgive me and move on with me, he's asking you and me, move on, forgive yourself. What has happened, you can't change. The serenity prayer. God help me to accept what I cannot change what I can, but wisdom to know the difference. I'm praying the same thing for you tonight. I'm praying the same thing for you tonight. Yes, I idolized him. That was my guilt. Because I wanted to please him, and you are pleasing him at the cost of your God. I did. That was how much I knew. But the fear that they instill in you that you can never make it, that you can never become anything. Today I look back and look at the lost opportunities. Here I am going to school at the age of 56 when I could have done it younger and thrived and benefited from my education. I am still benefiting from it today as a therapist, that I can speak and encourage somebody, that I can help somebody out of the trenches that I lived in. I thank God for that. So it's not a lost cause. But I waited because I believed in whatever was going on. But I'm asking you, can you look at yourself? You step out there and God is telling you, trust me. Try me and see if I'm not going to rain upon your life. He did. I'm not saying any of this to brag, but I'm saying this to encourage whoever is listening. Don't give up on yourself. Perhaps you think it is too late to equip yourself, to empower yourself. And ladies who are here, let us be mentors to our sisters. Let us be encouragers. I went back to school at the age of 56. Was it easy? Guess what? Some of my friends laughed at me and told me, your priorities are confused. This is the time to buy plots. This is the time to buy land. You are paying school, because I couldn't get scholarship as a foreign student at the time with no makaratasis. But God, he knew why he was putting me through that. If you are going through this and God is telling you, trust me, trust God. Put your hand in the hand of the master and allow him to carry you through, because until you put your feet in the deep waters, like Jesus told the disciples, throw your nets in the deep waters. Throwing your nets in the deep waters is salvaging your children before it is too late. Loving them enough to sacrifice for them. You've already sacrificed for them, but dare to step out, trusting God who gave you those children. Trusting God. I remember my youngest son was only 2 years when, in a very, very dire circumstance, I told God, God promised me one thing, that my children will never go to bed without a meal. Have we eaten black tea with bread? We did. Have we eaten ugali with turungi? We did. But we never went to sleep without food. That is the God I'm talking about. If you dare step out and jump out of this cliff, and I'm not telling you just to plan it. Take your time and plan yourself ahead. And when you're planning, be calm. Contain your emotions and everything. Do the right thing prayerfully. And I'm not saying that praying is the only thing you need to do, but I will not tell you not to pray. You will need to have God with you, because when everything else fails, God will never fail you. When it becomes too dark and everybody cannot walk in that dark trench with you, God will be there. He has been there for me. He is waiting there for you. If he can do it to Penny, he will do it for you. He is doing it for others today. He is doing it for others. I've seen a lot of testimonies through our sister Werimu Kemande, where people call her for prayer and guidance and everything. And the next thing you hear testimonies of different things. God is no respecter of persons. If he can do it for one sister, he can do it for the other. But we need to go back to the drawing board. Let us be genuine sisters keepers. Let us stand for one another. Don't be in the business of gossiping. when a sister is needing a shoulder to cry on. Don't be a gossiper when a sister's children are going on drugs and they are drinking and they are doing things because they are desperate, because the children are wounded out of domestic science, and all we see is our children drinking and doing this and doing the other. We don't ask ourselves, why did my son, who is a born-again Christian, also go into drinking or go into this and go into... Our children are not exempted. The pastor's children, and I want to highlight that also. Love on pastor's children. Love on pastor's children. Stop condemning them just because they are my children. I am the pastor. They are not. So if they make mistakes, give them the benefit of being children. Love them where they are. Encourage them. Pray for them and stand with them. But what we do is that you see pastor's children going haywire, and just like mine, just like yours, they are broken by the domestic violence going on in their homes. But we do not worry about them. We talk about, oh, the children of the pastors are the worst in our community. Yes, they are, because they are human beings. I am the minister, they are not. Bishop so-and-so is the bishop, but the children are not bishops. Give them a chance, allow them to be children, love on them, love our community children, not just because they are ministers' children, or because they are doctors' children, or because they are nurses. Love children for children. Our community children are who they are. We are the village. But you have to be a willing village. I cannot force you to be that village. But I'll promise you, unless we become that village today, you are laughing at somebody's son, and he's a boyfriend to your daughter who you think you're taking care of. You're laughing at somebody's daughter. They are the girlfriend of that son who you think is a minister today. Because we have talked about love being blind. They will go through those phases yourself. So it helped me. Let us help caring for these children communally, as a community, loving on them when they are failing, without laughing at them because of where they are coming from. Remember that what is happening to the pastor's wives, to the pastor's husbands, to their children is normal. They are human beings just like you. The book of Nahum said, the Lord is good. He is a strong refuge. When trouble comes, he is close to those who trust in him. Domestic abusers are very manipulative. They will do that with anybody. I'm not going to give all the signs. They will abuse you. They coerce you. They will abuse you, and then they will bring you roses tomorrow. They will take you on a vacation just to make sure that you remain in this circle, in a stupid circle. To make sure that you cannot think out of the box. Love yourself enough to look beyond the box. Don't destroy them. I'll say here, if you're tired of somebody, please don't kill them. Don't kill anybody. Let that person go alive. They are somebody's daughter or son. They are your children's parents. Walk away if you have to. But don't deprive your children of both parents because you killed somebody. The mother or the father dies. You end up in prison. What have you done? You create instant orphans. Your children don't deserve that. I want you to think about that when you're doing stuff. If you're very angry, please remember there is life after divorce. There is life after abuse. Because we have a God who heals. Am I saying it is instant? It is not. It is not. Healing from divorce and domestic violence is not instant. It took me 6.5 years of crying hopelessly. But God, He comes for you in due time. Trust Him. And I will say again, if there is disagreement where you feel very lethal, you are so dangerous, walk away for yourself. Remember that God says in the book of Numbers, the Lord will fight your battles. He does. I will say today he does it. I know for real. He will fight your battles. He will speak for you when you cannot speak for yourself. Yes, you have every reason to feel like you want to hurt. But when you do what we are seeing now, spousal killing, spousal abuse and everything, you will pay for it, because between you and a God, there is a case. Between you and your children, there is a case. When you are angry, that is not the time to decide what you want to do, because you are going to do something that also ends up hurting your children. I think my main concern is, when we are going through this, remember that you are a very important person in the life of your children. If not for anything else, please live for your children. Please walk away for the sake of your children. Don't deprive them of you, which I almost did, and I have regretted it for as long as I know. But there is a forgiving God. There is a God of a second chance. Forgive yourself and move on. Trust God to give you a new beginning. Isaiah 43 back to 18 again. I am doing a new thing. Can't you see it? I am making a way where there seems to be no way. He's creating a path in the jungles, in the trenches of your broken heart. I can go on and on and on, but I hope somebody has been encouraged. I hope that you know you are not alone. And I'll say again, please be compassionate with those who have been abused. Be compassionate for those who have gone through divorce. I will say it again. I do not know of anybody who got married with a plan B of getting divorced, whether it is a man or a woman. Nobody ever has that in their mind, but it happens. It can happen to you. It can happen to your children. Don't laugh at mothers or fathers who are struggling with children, because domestic violence incapacitates and impacts the lives of the children who are growing up in that environment. So love on those children as well, because like I said, the son you are laughing about, the daughter you are laughing about, could end up being your son-in-law, your daughter-in-law. Back to the mother-in-law, syndrome again, the in-law syndrome. Let us be careful. What you don't want done to your son or daughter, don't do it to somebody's child. They don't deserve it. Don't take your anger, don't take whatever is going on in your life against somebody. Just because it was done to you when you're in your own marriage that wrecked you, don't do it on somebody else. Let God fight for you, because He will. As for pastors and people who are in ministry, let us learn to say that we are human beings. Take care of yourself as you take care of the sheep, as you shepherd other people. Remember that you are your own Jerusalem. It has taken me years of rethinking my life to think, while I'm busy ministering and counseling, I need to regroup. I need to slow down. I need to take care of myself. I need to think about my own self and be the example, live by example. Maybe speak less, listen more, and practice what I say. Is it easy? It is not, but God is there for us. I want to encourage you that whatever you are going through, God is watching. He knows you by your name. He does not judge you. I'll say again, Malachi 2:16. We need to stop telling people just a few words. They're actually 3-4 words. This is what I hear mostly. For I hate divorce. That is God speaking. God hates divorce. That's what we keep saying. I want you to read beyond that. Because the reason God hates divorce is what it does to His children. It's not what you think about them. It doesn't matter what you think about them, but God hates it for a very different reason. And that is why we are saying, if that there is a life threat on you, if your life is in danger, walk away. God can heal your marriage away from, maybe give that person a space, rethink it. If you can work it out again. If not, God will give you a new beginning. Because He's able. You matter to Him, you matter to your children, you matter to your parents, your siblings. You can do it again. For I hate divorce, says the Lord, the God of Israel. But He also says, to divorce your wife is to overwhelm her with cruelty, says the Lord of heaven's armies. So guard your heart. Don't be unfaithful or hurt your wife. So God is not just saying, I hate divorce. That's not all he says. But we have just been using the Bible, just a few words that are convenient for us. We need to read the Bible in its totality. When he says he hates divorce, why does he hate divorce? He hates divorce, not the divorced. I'll say it again. He does not hate the divorced, but he hates divorce because of what it does to his children. Stop forcing people to stay in dangerous environments. Stop telling people to tolerate death threats. We have lost enough. And if they have not been killed, we have lost enough of our sisters and our brothers who have committed suicide because they were living in domestic violence that was incurable and everybody was judging them. They lived on until they couldn't take it, and the next thing they thought, in a moment of desperation, they took their lives, leaving behind children that you and I have to worry about. Why not help them? Why not support them? Why not encourage them to find a way of starting again so that they can bring up their children, so that they can be there for their children? They deserve a life just like the abuser. Just like we talk about rape, and this is another topic I'll address, rape victims, incest and sexual abuse. We have a culture that protects or covers the abuser. In the same token, we have a culture that protects the domestic abuser rather than the domestic abuse victims. I'll say again, we cover the rapists, we cover those who sexually abuse others, whether it is abusing our boys or girls. But because of a public image, because we want to protect the name of the family, we tell our children, don't ever talk about it. We cover the perpetrators. What are we doing? You are giving them permit. You have given them green light to molest not just your daughter, but your sons, your nephews and your nieces. It is the high time we said, whatever is wrong is wrong. If somebody is a rapist, stop telling the victims not to talk about it because they are going to mess up the family image, the public image. If somebody is going through domestic violence, don't tell them to stay on because if they leave or if they get divorced, your community is going to be tarnished. We are more concerned about the public image. You are more concerned about, being a Christian, and you would rather have somebody staying in there until they are murdered or until they take their lives. Let us go back to the drawing board. Let us be realistic. Let us love life. Let us care for the victims more than the victimizers. Because when we cover up the victimizers, the abusers of any kind, we are giving them a permit to continue doing what should not be done. It is your responsibility, just like it is my responsibility. If domestic violence will be minimized, we each have to play a part. Be your brother's or your sister's keeper. Protect those who are being victimized, whether domestic violence or rape or sexual abuse. Stop covering people just for the sake of public image, for the sake of family name. Value the life of this person, because when they know that we are valuing the abuser, a lot of them have ended up committing suicide. And those who have not committed suicide have become like basket cases. They lose their personal value. Have you asked yourself why we have so many of our children turning into gayism? Because they hate the opposite sex that abused them. There is a lot we as a community need to talk about. They saw a father beating up, or a mother beating up on their father, and they hate that the opposite sex. They see a father beating up on their mother. They hate the opposite sex. And ask yourselves, what is happening that we have a lot of our children turning into homosexuality? It's not just an innocent move. We need to go back and ask ourselves, what is causing this? Stop covering things like the ostrich that buries its head and thinks it's going to be okay. Not talking about issues, not talking about death does not mean death will not come. Not talking about sexual assault and rapes and everything, or domestic violence, it doesn't mean that these things are going just to disappear. They will not evaporate until, as a community, we address them, protect ourselves, and protect our children. Again, I said, it is not over. It is not over until God says it is over. Reach out for a therapist. Reach out for a counselor. I thank God because we have a community that is blessed with so many qualified therapists. Many of us have trained as telehealth providers. I am a life coach. I can talk to you from state to state. And I'm asking ourselves, there are things you will go and tell Dr. Alice or Dr. Maria. They can understand you from a cultural background. Rather than when you go to a Dr. Smith or Dr. Jones, or when you have immigration lawyers, you go to somebody else who does not even understand where you're coming from. I saw my attorney here, Mr. Wanjohi. We have many qualified people among us who have services that can meet our needs with a closer understanding, because they know where we are coming from. I encourage us to use the services among us. As I said, I'm a telehealth provider. I'm a board-certified death and grief therapist. Many of you know me as that lady who is a full-time mental health provider, and many others among us. I see them here with me. Please use the resources around us. Use the people around us, and don't suffer alone. Let us remove shame and stigma to those people who reach out for counseling or therapy. It is your life. Stop worrying what so-and-so is going to say when they realize that you're going for therapy. It's your life. Don't suffer because you're trying to keep a public image. Because until you are willing to take therapy yourself, your children are suffering. They will not reach out. And again, I will end up by saying, let us stop covering the victimizers. Let's keep talking. I am so glad. When I started talking about mental illness, I felt like a lone wolf, like I was singing to the choir. These conversations were not there. So I'm so encouraged that every time I open up my Facebook, there's somebody who is making a presentation on these finances, domestic violence, anything. We are a growing community. We are healthier by talking about these things, not covering them up. But when we bring this issue on the family tables, in our family conversations, in our households, let us empower our children early enough so that they grow knowing that they don't have to suffer alone, that there are resources out there. I took full-time counseling training because when I was going through my own stuff, there were very few. And the ones that were there, and I'm sorry to say, were predominantly men. I didn't know of any that I could go to as a woman who could understand what I was talking about. Again, there was too much shame and too much stigma for me to talk about it. And that is why I don't do this because I enjoy it or because it's not a compliment. But I do it to encourage you. Come out of your hiding. Don't suffer alone. Don't wait until you're too depressed, until you take your life or take another person's life. If you're angry, walk away. Don't kill anybody. If your life is under threat, take off. You can start again. You all have a good evening and a good weekend. I'll be back with a different topic. And if you know of something that you need for me to address, please feel free to suggest it. We'll address it because a family that speaks to each other stays together. A family that prays together stays together. There are so many things we've not been doing right, but now we know this coronavirus deal has brought up a lot of emotions in many of us. There is fear, there is stagnation in so many areas. We'll either make a choice. I am not going to come out of this the way it started. I want a change. Don't leave this coronavirus pandemic the way you came in. Change, find a way to how you can change yourself. What do you need to change? What do you need to start? Do you need to take some training? Do you need to take a course? Do you need to change a career? How are you equipping yourself and equipping your kids as well? Thank you so much, and God bless you.